Good morning and welcome to Straight No Chaser with Dr. Julius Bailey. As you know, I am Dr. Julius Bailey and I am live here on the beautiful campus of Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. You know, we're just about 3 weeks away from the start of fall 2020. And here on this campus, we're about a week away from students beginning to move in. Frankly, Tika, I'm just happy to have people moving in, I live here on campus and it's just good to have some life around here. But for all of you who are watching right now, we are just glad you've tuned in. Please start a watch party if you don't mind. Share this broadcast, like this page. We are also live on YouTube, so please subscribe to Dr. Julius Bailey, there on YouTube. And this is your first time here. I want you to know that we are a 1-hour talk show that brings you news, culture, and knowledge that primarily, but not exclusively, affects Black people. We are here for about 8 more episodes, and then after that, only sponsorships and donation will determine our fate. That is why I say Straight No Chaser with Dr. Bailey. Yes, it is my show, but it is also your show, and thus our show. I really don't know what God has in store for our show, but this day, I am grateful for you right now watching this and sharing this journey with us. If you don't know me, I am the Associate Professor of Philosophy here at Wittenberg University. I'm an author of 5 academic books and 1 memoir. My current book, Racism, Hypocrisy, and Bad Faith, I would love for you to go to broadviewpress.com or juliusbailey.com or any of your online retailers and support the project. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce all of you to my co-host, Ms. Tika. How you doing today?
Good morning. Well, excited about the conversation.
Well, this should be an interesting week. Personally, I'm just going through a lot. I got a lot on my shoulders, both today as well as just lately. It's a lot going on with my life. And then I got family. I got a 13-year-old daughter who's challenging me to the ends of the world. You know what I'm saying? But, fall semester coming and, after 5 months of being out of school, we have to make these. And I shout out to all administrators across the country. Right. All school administrators who have to make these tough calls about schools. No one is going to be 100% happy. And so, for all the parents out there who are trying to make these tough decisions, for all the teachers who are having to, make some tough decisions. Right. So I'm thinking about all of that, obviously, and across America, as we've been watching, COVID-19 is getting worse. You know what I'm saying? And it definitely ain't getting better with more cases and more cities. And then you got a president who's out here talking about, well, if we stop doing testing, we'll stop having cases. I'm like, boy, this cat here.
Not only do you have that going on, you have a Bailey 2022.
Well, that's a lot going on. That's actually a lot, I don't know what's going to happen with that. I do know that certainly there have been some calls for me to, create an exploratory committee.
Right.
And to see what the state of Ohio can do to possibly push knucklehead like me into service, right? The thing is that, like, even we have this week, right? We have a lot of young people this week, young leadership this week. And I just know that Ohio demands and deserves better leadership. I think at a time like this, when anxieties are on 10, when the after effects of COVID is still yet to be determined.
Right.
We need leadership at a state level that understands, that cares authentically, that's not a career politician,
Right,
all
right.
that kind of stuff. And so, if it is the case,
I think that's you.
You think that's me?
I think that's you, Doc.
Ooh.
Especially after hearing your approach and your strategy and the fruits of your labor as it pertains to our criminal justice reform.
Oh, you saw that
I
interview?
did. I saw that interview.
Well, I mean, that's one of my babies. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things that, should I jump out there and should the people want me to jump out there, I should probably say for state leadership as the role of governor of Ohio. I do think that, a criminal justice reform is something that I would certainly jump in.
And I think yours is achievable by far.
Well, we shall see. But, let's move to the show, right? We'll say the show about me. But the reality is that, just the other day we saw, with this COVID thing, a young 9-year-old girl, I think this weekend, had just died because of the symptoms. And so, we have to really engage in what's going on in the world.
We do.
Right. And that's partly what Straight No Chaser does. And so today's show, which I'll get into in a minute, is great. But we have 2 more shows this week. That's right. 3 shows this week as we highlight young 30s and 20-somethings who are doing great political, social, and entrepreneurial leadership work in their sort of respective communities. I tell you, with the energies in these streets over the past 2 months or so, with knowing that it's not too far in the distant future, there would be boardrooms and halls of power that will be burst wide open from young and energetic leadership on fire for justice and equity and the humanity of folk. It gives my heart joy. And so that is why I'm excited about this week as we go into Wednesday and a special show on Friday. But I think that's why I'm more excited about America. I think at this time allows us to really ask ourselves, what is the future of our country? What is the soul of our country? And having young leaders and having people who are on fire for trying to both be about the business of healing, but more so be about the business of governance through pain, I think is what we're about this week and what you alluded to in terms of Bailey 2022. But the reality is that we have to get into today's show, right? And so today's show is a show that I'm excited about, right? So we know that, there's a professionalism around diversity.
Correct.
Right? Institutions and colleges and organizations and businesses have, created these sort of positions within their institutions. They're rewriting sort of vision statements, right? As a lot of schools do. And in many cases, though, the rewriting of vision statements around diversity, while at the same time, if we're honest about it, they're sort of, kind of continuing with the status quo.
Right. And what's that mission statement looking like?
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about here. I'm here in a second, right? So, we just got to be careful as websites get, reworked and as banners get flyed up on campuses, as artwork gets put on the street, articulating diversity. We need to make sure that while schools and businesses are hosting the summits, but they're still maintaining a climate more aligned with the status quo, we need to put a little bit of pressure on that. And our first guest is Dr. Takiyah K Hamilton. She is the founder and director of Triple Ivy Educational Services. And for the sake of specifically to this conversation, she is the author of a recent Medium.com article that has served as the impetus to this show. And that title of the article on Medium.com is America's Private, White, Elite schools need reform. Again, if you're on your Google right now, just Google Takiyah K Hamilton, America's private white elite schools need reform. And so now, my homegirl from the Chi, I want to bring on to Straight No Chaser, Dr. Takiyah K Hamilton. How you doing, ma'am?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Wow, we're excited. You know, we're just blessed to have someone of your intellectual prowess, of your community activism, of someone who is certainly a historian. So our conversation is not just about fly by the pan conversations. Like you've studied your life on issues like this. We're just excited to have you here. So let's just jump into it. We have about 20 minutes or so with you. You've taught at the college level, right? You've taught at elite high school levels, right? I know with Sidwell Friends, I served a semester there. I was also at Milton Academy in Boston back when I was in graduate school. And so I know you've taught at schools like that. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, you are the owner and the education and an educational consultant at a writing services company. You know, all that stuff that you've done, tell the audience a little bit about how all those different hats have informed the other.
Well, I mean, I think that to start, a lot of my impetus for working in the area of education, particularly around issues of race, stem directly from my experiences growing up in Chicago. I attended the Chicago public schools, and for good or for bad, I had some great teachers, but I also was very much aware of how disadvantaged we were in terms of our resources and so forth. And I think that that's the thing that sort of guided me through. I landed at Dartmouth College, which was my entree into the Ivy League, and which up until that point, I think probably my knowledge of the Ivy League was limited to perhaps Harvard. I think I had heard of Harvard, certainly not Dartmouth in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire. But arriving there, I just was blown away by the resources that they had and the experiences that some of my classmates were privy to compared to my own experiences. And I think that's been the thing that really has kind of been in the back of my mind as I moved through my various teaching posts and also in my own educational experiences. So I think that there's a sort of transition that occurs when you actually you become part of these spaces in terms of realizing that, you know, now you're part of the elite and you have access to these resources, but also trying to stay tied to the community and just remembering that in many ways it's hard work, but in some ways it's definitely providence that allows some of us to make it through. So for each position that I've had, I've really tried to lend my insight in that regard to where I am. So for instance, when I was at Princeton, when I was studying my doctorate, I was a diversity fellow, and I also was the president of the Graduate of Women of Color Caucus. And I think that those experiences just allowed me to do the type of work that I often felt justified my presence at these elite schools. So, I mean, it all just sort of bleeds into each other. And then most recently, just starting Triple Ivy, which I founded in 2016, was a result of my frustrations with the job market. So, I don't want to say too much and lead the conversation beyond the questions that you have, but just as a note, I have this piece coming out with Dr. Janetta Cole, and I talk about really what you're asking me, just what it means to have been able to have access to all these spaces, but at the same time experiencing the frustration of being a Black woman and coming up in a job market that really in many ways stifles the more radical voices. And so Triple Ivy in many ways was the result of that. I just made a decision that I would pursue my own path rather than try to just force myself to assimilate to these spaces.
Wow. No, that's important. And I mean, and again, the reality is that, as you made reference to, you were a young Black girl from the Chi, and you did mention that at Dartmouth was alien to you, if you will, but was Ivy League like an aspiration of yours, or you just kind of fell into it?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, I don't think that I had too much of a knowledge of the Ivy League. Dartmouth actually was the only Ivy League that I applied to. All the other schools that I applied to were state schools, and I have to give credit to Gary Love, who is a mentor of mine, who actually started a program. He graduated from my high school in Chicago in the 70s, and he started a program where he would bring high school students, predominantly Black high school students, to Dartmouth to familiarize them with the school and the campus. And so I was part of that group. And I just arrived, and it was just so different from what I had experienced growing up that I just said I had to be here. So I wouldn't say that it was an aspiration, but once I came in contact with, those people and had that experience, I mean, I just really was, I guess the idea that I could do something like that kind of blew my mind. So I just continued push my way through the other institutions too.
And which just because for those, there are probably a lot of Chicago folk who are watching or who will watch just for that backdrop. What high school did you go to in Chicago?
I went to Kenwood Academy.
Kenwood. All right. Now that's a phenomenal school. We certainly know. And Dr. Lena, what's sister's name in music? Lena.
I know you're speaking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I can't think of it. Yeah, but she was a phenomenal teacher and educator in music. We know her. Unfortunately, a lot of you people who watched that R. Kelly series knew that they mentioned her in the R. Kelly series. But Kenwood is a phenomenal school. My junior year prom date went to Kenwood.
Oh, wow.
And then senior year, she gonna go with somebody else. She a trip. But anyway, you public school girls, y'all get on our Catholic school boys nerves. You know what I'm saying? I would have been a priest right now if it wasn't for some bogan high school girl who messed me up. But no. So we're on live with Dr. Takiyah K Hamilton, whose recent Medium.com piece, which we're about to get into, entitled "America's Private White Elite Schools Need Reform Now." And then the subtitle is that their diversity statements are long on words, but short on action. And so if you're watching, click over another browser and look that up as we speak. So let's just jump into it. Like, what inspired you to write this Medium piece?
Well, let me first point out, in the editing floor, my original title got cut. Which was actually The Death of Diversity. And the reason why I chose that article was because I wanted to highlight how traumatic the experiences are for many of us in these elite white institutions, to the point that I was, sort of comparing it to the trauma of all the other sort of racial injustice that we experience, especially most recently, police brutality. And then just the idea, sort of a double entendre, that, I believe that diversity initiatives, I feel like we need to just start over. We need to just, start from square one in terms of what these schools are attempting to do. But it's a piece that has been sitting on my mind for a while, and it actually had to do, some of it was influenced by my most recent experience teaching in an elite school, a secondary school, where I happened to be one of the most qualified teachers at the school, and just every day just felt embattled in terms of trying to prove myself, being micromanaged by people who have less education than I do. And then, just being reminded by the students that they really appreciated what I was trying to do in terms of the curriculum, and just facing this uphill battle against this white institution in terms of justifying my being there. So that was sitting on my soul. And just with everything that's been going on around the country in terms of, everyone, all these institutions and corporations signing on to the Black Lives Matter movement. And, a lot of this stuff is just, is just words. They're just, so lip service. They're giving lip service to their beliefs and their values when it comes to the experiences of Black people on campus. I mean, these are oftentimes very hostile environments for people like us. So I think that in a way, it was my intention to kind of call that out, to make them understand that we won't be fooled again. We won't be fooled once again by these, sort of half-hearted statements. The school that I was just speaking about, one of the reasons why I actually accepted the position there was because of their diversity statement. Diversity. I said, this is a wonderful place. Oh my God, they're so, they're driven by our well-being, and got there and found out it was a different story. So, and what was really curious about this place was that it was headed by the head of the institution was a Black man. And so yes, I just think that for me, I just wanted to make sure that I was a part of the historical record to make sure that they understand that we are not, we won't be blinded by these lofty statements, that we really want to see tangible reform in these spaces. So.
I know you read this, Cesar.
I did read it, and I came across where you said, well, good morning, Dr. Tika. Let's start there. Good morning, Takiyah. I apologize.
No worries.
In your article, you said, we also know that once white lives and or livelihoods become directly impacted, and there's a chance that their children will disinherit generational privilege bequeathed to them from supremacists of old, the continuation of protest among white liberals is likely doomed to meet the bend of history. Will you relate that, please, to the educational inequities within the school systems?
Well, I believe that, we walk around, we see these Black Lives Matter signs in everybody's yard. I was just in Andersonville here in Chicago 2 days ago, and all the businesses that lined that district, they had Black Lives Matter signs alongside the pride rainbow flags. And it just struck me the irony of the fact that Black people don't live in those neighborhoods, largely because they can't afford to. They're not attending schools in those neighborhoods. So really, what does that mean to support this ethos that Black Lives Matter when you're unwilling to address the structural conditions that keep us in positions where, for instance, with our schools, our neighborhood schools, that we don't have access to be able to make demands that will improve our opportunities. So I think that, I just, I call it a sort of healthy skepticism that Black people have. I mean, we really do appreciate the allyship. We appreciate the courage with which many groups are participating in this protest movement. But we need them to remember that after they go home and they wipe the sweat from their brow, we still have to deal with these inequities every single day in many different forms. And so that's the thing that I think that, I really just want people to remember in terms of, you really, I don't want to say protesting police brutality is easy, because obviously it's not. But that sort of overt racism has always been something that we've been able to get people, sort of on board with. But racism is so much more than a feeling. It's so much more than, an emotion that one has about another person. It also has to do with power and the distribution of wealth in this country. And until we're really ready to address those issues, I mean, even with institutions, you can let a few of us in, we can be your tokens, right? But until you're ready to address these structural issues, I mean, really, largely, we're going to continue to have these conversations, and we're going to continue to have these problems going forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you do make reference, again, if you're just tuning in, we're on with Dr. Takiyah K Hamilton, who we're talking about our recent Medium.com article. In reference to that, you stated in the article, not only that, and referring to issues of disenfranchisement, but these institutions will also have to come to grips with how their diversity initiatives have failed Black and brown people. Many of these schools have been of the mindset that in order to satisfy their commitments to diversity, all one need to do is sprinkle in a Black or a brown and stir, right? I like that, right? Much of what they're interested in is the appearance of diversity. However, they recruit Black educators and other teachers of color merely as a matter of PR, but they don't really ever expect that these institutions will be transformed. Wow, I mean, that's a powerful statement, right? And especially among neoliberals who understand that part of the healing process has to do with throwing money places, right? But we also, as you're alluding to, but the work still has to be done, and the work is not simply in a hire here or a hire there. It is in the structure of the institution, and how is it that even issues of race and racism become addressed, right? And so one of the things that I always wrestle with administrators across the country with stuff like this is that what avenues then does a Black professor or a brown staff worker have when they feel that people in power, their mid-level administrators, right, are the ones who are oppressing them, right? It's not just my colleague who I cut grass with, right? It's actually my boss, right? As the song say, who can I run to, right? That kind of time, right? So Sister Hamilton, talk to us about the ways in which, the way you would encourage, if you were consulting an institution today, and they're telling you, listen, we have a problem with Black and brown turnover. We can't keep Black employees here. They're always complaining about this and that. We're trying. We have some programs. We do it. What do you say? Look, how do you help them to address some of the structural and systemic issues?
Well, first, they can hire someone like me.
I know that.
And by someone like me, I mean someone who really is not afraid to tell them where we see these, where their blind spots are. So I sort of, in the article, I sort of referenced this, notion of a shiny Negro, right? I think part of the idea is they really want a certain type of Black person in these spaces that will assimilate and one who won't cause too much trouble. And we've seen this throughout history, right? In terms of the expectations for assimilation, political accommodationism among Black people, but people who actually express viewpoints that are different from that don't align with the values of the institution. Those are the people that you need in these spaces. And so I think that I think that it's really important. It was actually, I believe, Brittany Cooper. She wrote something. People know Brittany Cooper, the feminist scholar. But I saw something on Twitter. She said, "It matters the type of Black person you hire, right?" So it's not enough to just sprinkle in a few of those Black and brown people who will replicate the values of that institution. You need a certain type of Black person. You need a certain people of color who are invested in transforming these structures, who have a knowledge of the history, these investments, these schools. I mean, I use the phrase bastions of white supremacy. I mean, their history is tied to this notion of white supremacy. And so all of that has to be undone. You don't want people who are just trying to get in where they fit in, right? You want people who are going to be transformative. And I think that's really the starting point for institutional change.
Yeah, no, that's so rich, and that's so important. And what was the term he used about a slick? What was it? Slick Negro?
Shiny Negro.
What was it? A shiny
Negro.
To all my shiny Negroes, I love you. But we'll drink to that.
I mean, I guess some people might assume I'm a shiny Negro, but.
Well, I always, I go back to my vacation Bible school days, and Jesus loved all the little children, shiny and dull, what I'm saying? Right. But the reality is, though, you're right, our campuses, in order for transformative change to happen, you need transformative leadership, right? And you need transformative leadership at every level, not just at the presidential level, or especially at the vice presidency of diversity, right? I mean, that's where we're having, right? We're having a number of these folk who are being hired, but yet have little power to effectuate change, right? And so, so they become, as we started the show, essentially professionalized folk, right, with the title to sort of basically, as Dr. Hamilton, you're saying, is to sort of capitulate to the status quo. So now you're right about that. So listen, our time is moving. You really, but I do want to get to something that you're involved in now. I wanted to get to your the cost of integration article that was published in the DC Historical Society. But our time is getting short, so I still had to bring you back. But those of you who are again Googling right now, you can Google Dr. Takiyah K Hamilton, and the title of the article that I'm about to ask her a little bit about is The Cost of Integration, where she's engaged in a conversation with Garrett Wilkinson. And those of you who are not historians or don't know much about Garrett Wilkinson, I know all the DC folk, the Berry Farm folk know him, but Southeast, give a shout out to them. But certainly, let's just jump right into it. We know that Garrett Wilkinson, especially in the early to mid 50s, was very much sort of a thorn, I think you would almost say, in the side of organizations like the NAACP, who was really fighting for pure integration. And he's looking at the fact that, listen, we might have to sustain segregational educational spaces for the upliftment and betterment of our young people. And so what I just want to kind of ask you is that when it comes to like these issues about this push for diversity, can you talk a little bit about your current book project, and especially as it relates to this, as the article says, the cost of education, and who's bearing the cost, and are Black children actually lagging in this sort of race to the top?
Yes. So the article focused on Dr. Wilkinson is really in many ways speaks to the larger book project, which is trying to sort of find what my narrative arc, my sort of underlying argument is. This really writing about Wilkinson helped me to kind of figure that out. And basically, there's throughout the history of DC, the educational system, from the 19th century up through the 20th century, they were the arguments between Black people who believed that educational leadership provided them with a space to be autonomous and a space to wield power in a city that was where everyone, Black and white residents, were deprived of the right to vote. He wanted to ensure that political autonomy was sustained, and he believed that the separate but equal school system was the best way for that to occur. And so he really opposed most efforts to by the NAACP, by other various leaders, to integrate the school system, also because he was a champion of vocational education, and he believed that was going to be the surest route to advancing African-American opportunities under the evolving economy. And so this really speaks to the larger book project in terms of the contestations in Black, various sectors of the Black community in DC, who were in no ways monolithic. The contestations over whether or not integration would serve as the immediate answer, well, actually, whether or not integration would serve as a long-term answer to a lot of the problems that plague Black communities, and whether or not it made sense to sort of pursue that legally, to kind of hold off, to wait for the schools to be integrated. So yeah, I mean, what I really love about that piece and what I'm doing, my project, is that it really challenges the integrationist framework. It really demonstrates that Black people weren't just simply hoping to integrate for the purposes of being existing alongside white children and white bodies. That they weren't just of this mindset that they needed to become like people and become a part of these communities in order to advance, but that the integration really was just one of many routes that they pursued and that they thought was important. And so for them, they valued more than anything else access to opportunity than they did sort of the ideological implications of integrating the school systems.
Powerful stuff. So we're looking forward to that book from you, sister. Thank you, Dr. Takiyah Hamilton.
Yes.
Those of you who are just been watching, again, you've been watching Dr. Takiyah K Hamilton, who is the founder and director of Triple Ivy Educational Services. We've been talking about her Medium.com article. Hopefully you've Googled it by now, but we've been talking about her Medium.com article, America's Private White Elite Schools Need Reform Now. Now. Give a drink to the now, right?
Now.
We can't keep waiting, now.
Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful.
No, we thank you, Doc. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
No, we need it now.
Now.
We need it now. And, it's so interesting because, America is right now, the mirror has been turned upon itself, right? And so, for a number of people, especially since the 80s, and you have so many schools that are, multiracial, high schools, middle schools, grammar schools, even colleges, that they've forgotten the ways in which racism operates, right? And as they forget, they expect Black and brown folk to just say, hey, what's wrong? You're here. We cheer for you. You know what I'm saying? We have lunch with you. We're cool with you. We even allow you to have a Black student union. We don't trip about that. You know what I'm saying? You got Black parties and we do the hip hop dance. We do the nay too. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is, so what y'all tripping about?
Right. No.
You see what I'm saying? And so meanwhile, Black students at every level have to deal with both the micro and the macroaggressions.
Right.
Have to wrestle with all those things under the auspices of pretty much diversity language, but as Sister Hamilton says, not diversity action. Right? And so we have to put pressure on our institutions now. We have to make sure that we have people in positions that understand that complexity. Right. And I think our next guest does that.
I think so.
So do we have them ready? All right. So listen, we have Dr. Shakir Abdullah, who is the Vice President of Student Affairs at Clayton State University. He was the Assistant VP under the University of Missouri system, and that's where I know folk loved him. I was in a couple conferences with him, and when he come through, everybody followed him. I'm like, what about me? Here I am, and they're like, nah, that's Dr. Shaq, that kind of stuff. And so he is a graduate of this institution, Wittenberg University, as well as Ohio State University and Auburn University. I'm Dr. Shaq, welcome to Straight No Chaser, brother.
Appreciate you, Dr. Bailey. Thanks for having me, and appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk with you all today.
Gee, look at him. He sound vice presidential.
He sound on a mission. He sound presidential.
He sound presidential, right? Watch out there, Clayton State. But look, Dr. Shaq, man, look, I got to give you a shout out. The reality is that, we're here live. We actually taped this show in the Student Center of your institution. And so folk have been tweeting about you right now. Right now, the internet is probably blowing up. Shaq is on TV. So I'll give you a second here to give a shout out to Wittenberg, Tiger Up, and all the other kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, that's my home ground. That's where I was raised. Wittenberg really did a lot in terms of helping my personal development. So much love for Wittenberg University, love for the class of 99, all those folks that came in for the 99, 2000. And it also helped that I was there and I recruited a lot of students for some of the following years. So I think for me, my Wittenberg footprint expands maybe a decade or more because of folks who were there before me and folks who were there after me. All of those folks were influential in my life. And I also have to give a shout out to ZChi chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha, where we ran a yard when I was there back in the day. And it's been a long time, but always helpful, always looking forward to come back and help Wittenberg out. Always looking forward to mentoring Wittenberg students, and certainly appreciate the fact that not only did I graduate from Wittenberg, but my younger sister Jathia and my younger brother Yusuf also graduated from Wittenberg. And so shout out to everybody at Wittenberg. I can't name everybody in the time we have today.
All right, yeah, that's enough because they ain't giving me no money for this. So that's enough. Brother, good to see you, man. Thank you. So let's just jump into it, man. I told you that I wanted you to take a look at Sister Takiyah's piece.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I should have said it. No, I love my job, and they give let's be like, drink to that. Now stop. Now that's my boss. Now shout out to Wittenberg, fly to W, all that kind of stuff, right? I asked you to read the Sister Takiyah's piece. Just some initial thoughts. Like, what do you think about that piece?
I mean, it's on point. I mean, we have a challenge when we talk about diversity in institutions. Oftentimes, that's just it. We just talk about it. We don't actually do the work it takes to make change. We don't actually show up and give people the agency to make change. And I think, that it's real. My dissertation was actually inspired by working with folks who did the work, but in my opinion, didn't know the work, didn't love the work, didn't love the people. That was a challenge for me because I came from a place where I did the work because I genuinely loved helping my folks out and making a difference and being a difference. And I saw too many people who did the work and they were just appreciative of the paycheck. I mean, we're all complicit. All of us who work in higher ed, we're complicit with our institutions and the things that they do because oftentimes, they pay us a salary to survive and to live. And the reality is just that, they buy our silence in some cases. And I think for me, hey, brother, I'm just saying, I've seen it too often. I work and I've been fortunate to be in positions where that hasn't had to be the case, but I was frustrated by folks who that for them, it was the case. And so my research was on the multicultural competence of folks who did diversity service across the country. I surveyed 800 diversity services staff across the country to get a sense of what it was that brought them to the work. How did they see the work and really whether or not they were multiculturally competent to do the work, because I saw too many people who fell into what Longaberger and Sedlicek call the multicultural myth. It's this notion that just because you are a person of color doesn't mean that you should be representing and leading people of color, because you don't necessarily have the commitment or capacity, the knowledge, skills, and awareness to actually do it. So I think her article was on point.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that that multicultural myth piece is an important piece to sort of get us to think about in terms of how we hire, right?
Yeah.
Who we hire and how we hire. I think that, the quality as well as the sort of the courage, I would even say, of these mid-level administrators or vice presidents like yourself to bring in folk who challenge them is one of the questions, right? A lot of times we hire folk to, like I say, as Sister Takiyah said, to check the box, but also we don't want much feathers to be ruffled. You know what I'm saying? and so that's why I think you co-signing that and saying that happens is an important piece. But look, you're a father as well as a VP, right? You have young kids who at some point are going to be vice presidents. Let's just kind of talk, on a meta level. Like when you wake up every day and you do whatever you alphas do in the morning, sorry about that.
That's all right.
You also realize that you're trying to put forth the foundation for a better tomorrow.
Yeah. When
you think about your work at Clayton State, obviously, like I gave shout out to the work that I know you did in Minnesota that I followed you with. What do you think about? What do you think about in terms of what are the foundations that you want to lay as a student affairs leader for those younger student affairs personnel, as well as those university personnel who are wrestling with how to handle Black, Brown, LGBTQ, all these kind of folk through diverse initiatives?
And so for me, as an alpha, I wake up and I brush my teeth with excellence. And that's usually how I get my day started. But the reality, the reality is that, I actually model what I want to see. I'm an authentic person, and everything I do has to be towards the success or the improvement of the condition of our students and our community. Clayton State is really the perfect institution for me right now. We're a predominantly Black institution. 65% of our students are African American. We've got 70% Pell eligible. Lots of first generation students. And as a first generation college graduate myself, I see myself in those students, and I always remember, what didn't I know? What do I want these students to know that I didn't know in the process of going through college, in the process of navigating the system? What were the hidden rules of higher education that people had to teach me, or I had to learn the hard way? Trying to help those students learn that the easy way. And I mean, I think for me, being a parent, always instilling a sense of awareness in my children. It's important to know who we are, know our history, know the context of the United States. And so we have these conversations at home. I remember my parents had these conversations with me when I was growing up. I remember watching Eyes on the Prize. I remember having discussions and going to see speakers and meeting, Kwame Ture and going and seeing these people in real life and in real time. And so for me, that was my life. And I'm trying to share some of those same things with my children. And then, sharing some of those same things with our students, because it's important to have that sense. I mean, I've never, had the opportunity to take an African-American history class, but those lessons had always been instilled with me, in me, by my parents and by the community and all of those things. So it was important for me to make sure our students have those opportunities to learn it whenever they get it. I mean, if they didn't learn it growing up, they need those opportunities through programs. They need those opportunities through courses and things like that. So for me, recognizing that the leadership, I have to lead authentically. I have to speak truth to power on a regular basis. I have to contextualize things that happen and are happening. I mean, that's critical for me. It's critical for me, and it's critical in order for us to be successful in higher ed. I mean, there are some challenges that we're running into related to diversity, and a lot of those challenges fall into this notion of good intentions gone bad. They have good intentions, but there's no solid foundation, and they are not leaning on experts. They are leaning on people who make them feel comfortable. And I make people feel comfortable, but I actually don't do it in a way that sacrifices the truth, or that sacrifices the real need or the real outcomes or the history of our institutions in our country.
Yeah, so I think that's a powerful answer, and I thank you. And and I'm glad that your chief experiences the excellence that it does in the cold way that it does. So I think, though, I want to ask you about maybe the most effective route. Maybe I should put it that way, or the effective route to sort of enact diversity initiatives in higher education. Right, that's where I want you to maybe address here. But I want you to think about it in terms of contextually, right? And so Sister Takiyah Hamilton is talking about the Ivy League, right? The Ivy League with billions of dollars in endowment, right? With, numbers of students who are banging down their doors to get in to pay those $50,000 and $60,000 tuitions. Is this a resource issue, right? And so do the endowments and do the tuitions and the full enrollments of Ivy Leagues and schools like that, or even, quite frankly, the decently robust University of Minnesota system that you came from, are those the answer, right? And so they have enough money to throw at this issue of diversity and equity, or is there something else that's going on? It's not just about money. It's something else that has to be about the business of this diversity work. So can you just throw money and programs behind this work, or is there something else that has to be in effect to sort of do effectual diversity programming?
So the money, it certainly helps. You definitely need resources in order to do this work effectively. But what really is necessary is some intestinal fortitude from leadership. Leaders have to lead. Leaders have to be the first ones in line. They have to be sitting up front during diversity trainings. The trainings and the coursework have to be regular. They have to be ongoing. There is a lot of frustration oftentimes with diversity training, because if you do it one time, people of color are often disappointed because there is no depth to it. And research shows that white folks are frustrated because it's just an introduction and they don't have a chance to explore more deeply the history, the challenges, the opportunities. And so it has to be ongoing. It has to be consistent, and it has to be valued. It has to show up in the tenure process. It has to show up in the retention process. It has to show up in the engagement and the service component. For faculty and staff, the work has to be consistent and it has to be honest. Some of the challenges we run into is that folks don't want to rock the boat. Folks don't want to upset those donors. You think about the Ivies and all the money that they have, they could easily change the perspectives of their students by mandating courses, but they don't want to upset folks who might be more conservative and less open to some of these conversations. I was reading somewhere almost 60% of Harvard students are legacy students. So they don't want to disrupt the gravy train. They don't want to disrupt that cart. We think about Dr. King's, his condemnation of liberals and particularly liberal whites. And the challenge is that oftentimes liberal folks feel like they already know, so they don't need to learn. They don't need to have more education. And even people of color oftentimes feel like, oh, I already know this, I experienced it, but they're not necessarily engaging and immersing themselves in the theory and the practice and the knowledge and the skills and the history. So there's much work that we can do to change the way our institutions operate. And this is, this is part of the work that I do and some of the goals of the work that I do, but lots of opportunities exist. Money is not enough. You've got to have some dedication. You've got to have some understanding that, by doing these things, you're going to improve your climate. You look at the demographics in terms of who's going to be in school in the next 20 years. Schools are only going to become more and more diverse. And I think it takes me to Derek Bell's critical race theory perspective. One of the tenets of critical race is convergence of interest. And convergence of interest says that white people won't engage in diversity issues until there's a benefit for them and not just a benefit for people of color. And I think this is what we're seeing in this moment. We're seeing a convergence of interest around people working against police brutality because now folks believe people when they talk about the abuses and things like that are happening. So it has to be a strong commitment, not just with dollars, but with leadership, with action, and with some continual education. And I think that is what moves the needle.
So we are wrapping up the interview here with Dr. Shakir Abdullah, the Vice President of Student Affairs at Clayton State University. Just real quickly on that, before I ask you this last question, do smaller schools then have, although they don't have the resources necessarily, do they have a leg up because they have less politics to navigate, do you think?
I think in some ways they have a leg up because you've got more engagement. I think back to my time at Wittenberg, I came into Wittenberg, we had a class of nearly 100 Black students that came in with me. And if you think about the size of Wittenberg, less than 2,000 students and 1,000 Black kids in a freshman class, I mean, that is a critical mass, and it allowed us to get to know each other, allowed us to get to know a lot of our white students from all over the country. That, I think, was the golden age of Wittenberg. I really got a chance to meet a lot of folks, got to know folks. I was involved in organizations across campus, and it broke down a lot of those barriers because even if I didn't know a particular white person or a white person didn't know me, they knew somebody that I knew, and we had relationships and we developed strong relationships. And I think that was the beauty of Wittenberg. And that's kind of what helped start me on this journey, because I got to know other folks and other cultures and other experiences. And I wouldn't have gotten that at a larger institution. And it was a really important decision that my mother helped me make because, I had a chance to go to Ohio State on a full scholarship as an undergrad. And she said, I would rather you be at a smaller school. And it was a great decision because I was able to jump into leadership positions. I remember, Rodney Hopkins pulled me onto the executive board of the Concerned Black Students and said, hey, you need to be involved in this. I mean, I had people like Brian May and John Shoemate, Johnny Pryor, David Walker, all these people, Kenny Pope, all these people pushed me to be my best self while at Wittenberg. And, I'm naming all these men, but there were women, Bianca Bell and so many others who were there to encourage me and to propel me to leadership positions. But a lot of it stemmed from a decision that my mother helped me make to attend a small school like Wittenberg. So I think there is an advantage there, even without the funding resources that some of these other schools have.
I got you, man. I thank you for that. And so I know that, so my last question here, you have an online diversity company that you've launched. And tell us about what prompted you to create that, and how can folk who are listening benefit by your website and the company itself?
No, I appreciate that, Dr. Bailey. So my company is Practical Diversity Associates. You can find it at www.pracdiv.com. And I started this company in 2011 as I was finishing up my PhD. One of the things that I learned in my research is that folks are frustrated by the processes of learning diversity and inclusion work. Multicultural competence is a path that we're always on, and it's hard for a lot of folks to do. And so I wanted to provide an easy way or a practical way for folks to learn about diversity and inclusion. And what I'm doing this summer is I'm launching my online diversity training module, and it's going to be called Tasked with Increasing Diversity and Inclusion. And so it's the TASK stands for topic, awareness, skills, knowledge, and then engaged discussion. All of that is critical. You've got to have multiple conversations regarding diversity and inclusion, and you've got to be willing to critique the training. You've got to be willing to critique your previous knowledge, and you've got to be able to do this consistently. And this is what I'm offering to folks through my task with increasing diversity and inclusion. So looking forward to this work, and really, to me, this is my life's work, and to be able to share it with folks is really what I'm looking forward to doing.
Okay, and these are institutional models or modules, classroom modules. What
they can be used. They can be used in any spaces. So what it'll be is it's really about each module is about 20 minutes of content talking about a topic. And then you got another 40 minutes of engaged discussion and creating kind of templates and plans for your organization or your classroom or whatever organization you are, because you want to be able to have some takeaways. And this will be feedback from people who work with your organization, work within your organization. And so it is, it'll be customizable as well. So I'm going to have the 8 modules that are already set. And if folks want to engage me in creating custom models, I'll certainly do that. If folks want keynotes or other specific trainings, I'll be able to do that as well. So really, I'm just trying to provide people with this opportunity to get the work started. I mean, there's no time like the present, and there are many more people who are interested in these conversations, and I want to give them the ability to have some of these conversations by sharing some of the and perspective were eye-opening to me.
And so one more time, what's the name of the company?
It's Practical Diversity Associates. You can find me at www.pracdiv.com, pracdiv.com. And so looking forward to doing a launch next month. And so I'm going to make sure I reach out to all my folks, particularly my colleagues at Wittenberg and everywhere else. So I'm excited. I'm excited about doing this. So I appreciate the platform.
To Dr. Abdullah, to his Practice Diversity Company, and to his Task Initiative. We'll drink to that, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
I thank you, man, for coming through, and we'll be in touch soon.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks for hosting me. I appreciate it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Tika, that was good stuff, right?
Very good stuff. My hope is that the audience, and not only the audience, but universities at a whole, appreciate folks such as yourself, Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Shakir, because of the passion that you have, and not just for our now generation, but the generation to come. Like, you guys are really doing some great things that some parents and students might not be, cognizant of. So I thank you all for that.
Well, the reality is that, when we think about, I'm going to be melodramatic, when we think about the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyd's. And I mean, it's a lot of knees on the necks of these students.
It is.
You know what I'm saying? And the reality is they pay good money to come to these institutions. And if people aren't paying attention to the social and spiritual dying process that's being done when institutions avoid or ignore their cries,
Right.
then we ain't no better than Derek Chauvin. I mean, I'm gonna put it out there. You know what I'm saying? And so we can't protest Derek Chauvin
Right.
and want the arrest of the people in Breonna Taylor's if our institutions are doing the very same thing with the knees on the necks of its students.
Come on now.
Right? I can't get into that, but the point is, we are glad that we had those two powerful speakers. And so, as you know, those of you who are watching, we aren't finished yet. You know that. If this is your first time, I know the guest, we got one more segment. We call this segment I'll Drink to That. Although, as you see, we've been drinking already. But that's what we do here at Straight No Chaser, right? If you are a sponsor and you want to sponsor the I'll Drink to That segment, it is available for you. And so please contact us. If you can ask our guests to come on in. We think about knees on the necks of our people. We have to ask ourselves, what is the response, right? What are the ways in which we're going to engage in the next process of leadership and activism? We can be out on the streets. We can certainly be in the boardrooms. We can be in the halls and town halls. But we have to be about the business of what I like to call sort of citizenry and citizen education. And citizen education involves voting. And that's just real talk. Like, you can't just, protest for almost 50-something days in Oregon, Portland, and then, 30 and 40-something days across the country and not follow that up with sustained work. And so for those of you who are in the Springfield, Ohio area or in the Clark County area, you all know that we have an election that's coming up in November. This election is extremely important, not just for our county, but obviously those of us who are in this area know that we have individuals who are running for various offices. But today, our Straight No Chaser, I'll Drink to That. We have a phenomenal woman, a leader who have been in this, born and raised in this community, Miss Sheila Rice. She is a gem of our community, involved in all types of organizations, from Springfield Foundation to Women's Organization, NAACP. She's a part of the Bath Smith Connection. We gave them a I Drink to That a few weeks ago. She served 20 years of as our deputy registrar, right? I'm gonna tell you a quick story. I called her, I think it was New Year's Eve, listen, is there gonna be a place open so I can get me a driver's license? Because my birthday is the 29th of December. I need to get it before I get arrested. And she called me back and said, Julius, we're open. Don't worry about it. On New Year's Day, come through, get your license. And it was so appreciative. But listen, she's currently running for clerk of courts, right, here in Clark County. And so I do want to give her a few minutes here to talk about why she's running, what her background is, and why she cares so much. I know she cares. She's already proven it. We don't have to prove her. But again, for those of you in Springfield or those of you who might be listening, I want you to know why you should vote for her in November. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So why you? Why you? Why clerk of courts? Why right now?
Well, why me? Because I always wanted to do the clerk of courts, but at some point it looked like it was never going to happen. And so there's been a communication breakdown in the court system between the clerk and the judges. And so it just became an opportunity. But it was always a dream. So whenever I would go by the courthouse, I would always think, Lord, why don't you take this away from me? You know how you want something and you see it's not going to happen? And I used to say, Lord, why don't you just take this away from
Remove
me?
this cup.
But he didn't. He didn't take it away because he knew that it was not denied, it was just delayed. And so when this opportunity came, I was approached by some court officials about, pursuing it. And I did. And it's been a dream. I've had close to 10 years experience in the clerk's office. I've started there as a file clerk, through OIC, and I worked my way up very quickly to a supervisor, where I supervised the criminal division, court of appeals, and jury management. And so I have the experience of the office. I know the office. It just seems like this is a good way for me to make my exit, just receiving something I dreamed about. It's a job I loved. I loved when I had it. I left it at one point to work for my church, which was really a tasseled decision, but it just seemed like the right thing to do.
Right.
And now it's come back around, and it's just, I just know I'm the clerk for everybody.
I know that's right.
I really do.
And if anything that you should know, those of you who are watching, she also, especially if you're in the area, you know she is the owner and proprietor of the L,
Yes.
right? And so you open that place up to anybody in the city. Obviously, COVID-19 has affected some of that stuff, but we thank you for that work. And so there are people right now who, they say, listen, I don't really get involved in local politics. I don't know, Miss Rice, he cool, but, I don't know about voting for locally. Tell us why they should vote in November.
Well, you definitely should vote locally. Sometimes I even say local is bigger than national. But on local level, your clerk maintains records. The jobs that we do, we handle the bond money that comes in. There's been some mishaps that would definitely affect you if your family ever was in that position that we have to avoid. Just being able to access the records. It's just so many things that we need to do, because I've been here all my life. And the one thing I think the gift that the Lord gave me was customer service. I treat people the way I want to be treated, and I don't care who you are. And there's a lot of times when you go into a place, you're just stereotyped. I'll never do that. I'll treat you just like I would treat my children, my mother or my father. Because even when I worked in the courthouse, the one thing I saw a lot of times was a lot of bad things happen to good families.
Yes.
Especially young people who would go away to college. You get in that peer group and you're either going to go left or right. Sometimes it's not an in-between. You just either have to be a victim or you have to be a victor.
I know that's right. You better preach up
So
here.
I just, it's just important that you know that sometimes when bad things happen to good people, I'm going to make sure you get treated with dignity. It could happen to anybody.
Right.
And so even with divorces, the strain of divorces, that just puts some people in a different mindset.
Right.
It's all about customer service. And I know that's my gift.
Right.
I just know that's my gift. I've been able to prove it at the License Bureau just throughout the 20 years I've been there. And I just want to show it to people how important it is.
And so thank you for running. Thank you for following your call. Thank you for staying true to that call. Even when, as you say, the dream didn't meet the opportunity. Now it has. And obviously for everybody who's watching this, whether you're here in Springfield and Clark County or not, you know that you are part of a situation where you personally, you professionally, people around you have dreams to meet certain goals. And you feel as though that, listen, it's just not working. It's just not happening. It's just not doing it for me. What Sheila Rice has just told you, she's been thinking about this for a decade or more, but it just happens to be the case that her timing, God's timing, didn't come together. And she says to you that when, in fact, your dream then meets the opportunity, that's when it's time to act. And so if you're listening today, the opportunity is now, not just for Sheila Rice, but for us in Clark County. The opportunity now is for us to elect Sheila Rice for the clerk of courts, to ensure that there are people who, as she said, under divorce decrees, trying to come in there for criminal matters or civil matters, and they're stressed out, they're frustrated. And to know that you have a leader that you will have a leader in the office that understands the stresses that people have when they just come in and say, I don't even know how to fill out this paperwork. All I know is that my husband or my wife is driving me crazy and I got to get a divorce. All I know is that the court said I got to come down here, pay some fines. I don't know what's going on. Help me. And we don't want people in that position who said, well, just shut up, just wait in line. We want people like a Sheila Rice, grounded in spirituality, leadership, understanding that fundamentally what's important is the humanity of people. And so in Clark County and Springfield in November, vote for Sheila Rice. Those of you around the country, find those local leaders who care about you and the humanity of who you are. Support them. Don't get caught up in the malaise of Trump versus Biden and I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that and who cares? Because who cares are the local people who are actually in your neighborhoods. They care. They need you. Straight No Chaser encourages you to be participatory in these next, 99 days, right?
99 days.
99 problems, but voting for Sheila Rice ain't gonna be one, right? Shout out, and I'll drink to Sheila Rice for her elect. No, you ain't drinking now.
Okay,
Yeah,
no.
I drink to Sheila Rice.
I need a drink.
No, you don't. I'll drink to Sheila Rice. And thank you all for coming out today. This is Straight No Chaser with Dr. Julius Bailey. Miss Tisa is off the set right now, but she is still here. We just want to thank you for always supporting this show. Show up on Wednesday. We'll be here same time, same place. We also have a special show on Friday. Straight No Chaser. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, as well as on YouTube. To Sheila Rice, to all those local leaders who are running wherever you are in the country, Straight No Chaser will drink today. God bless you. Have a good day.
Well, thank you.